Hello everybody, and welcome back to OMB Reviews. I am the critic who is a cynic. Hope you're doing well, and today we'll be talking about the film No Time to Die. Will it be a box office triumph, championing in the new age of the box office back for everyone, or will it be a massive flop? Well, if you read this headline from Scotty Boy Mendelsohn, it seems that it might actually make money. However, when you look further into the numbers and also what Scotty Boy Mendelsohn is actually saying, things aren't really as bright as he might try to indicate. But before going any further, please make sure you smash that like button, light up that fire button if you're watching over on Odyssey. Also, make sure you're subscribed to the channel. That way you get, also with that bell notification on, that way you know every time a new video or live stream goes live on the channel. All right, so as it says here, box office prospects for No Time to Die just got brighter, according to Scotty Boy Mendelsohn. Now, just as a bit of a reminder to everyone out there about this movie. So, I think the most conservative estimate for the cost of this movie, so the actual production cost before marketing, was around $250 million. I was reading one of the sources that listed $301 million as the net cost. However, when you read that article, you see that that's including basically the cost of marketing that they had already spent on the movie. And so obviously one could argue saying, yes, but doesn't that mean that because they already spent it and now they have to spend more, that this film probably cost more than the $250 million before adding on additional marketing? Probably, but let's just go ahead and go with the more conservative number here, because even with the more conservative number, you are seeing a situation where this film needs to make around $625 million worldwide in order for it to break even. How do we get to that number? Well, if we take the, again, more conservative estimate of the actual budget of the film being around $250 million. When you take into account typical marketing costs, that bumps it up to around $375 million. When we remind ourselves that studios only get about 60% of the overall box office when everything is said and done, if the movie were to make $625 million, that would be enough to cover the $375 million, again, when you take the 60% cut for the studio. Again, $625 million this film needs to make worldwide minimum to break even. We're not even talking about going into profit territory, and also we're not even talking about the other costs that this film likely has, especially with the fact that it did spend up to $60 million on marketing about a year ago, because remember, this film has just been pushed back again and again and again. Really one of the first big films to get pushed back in any major way, and has always been kind of the big one that has been moving, kind of shifting with the times, and really has led to a lot of other films moving along. So much so that there were even talks about Amazon potentially buying things up because of just how unlikely this film is to do anything, and they're trying to obviously offset the cost of this movie. But again, $625 million is what they need to break even. But according to Scotty Boy Mendelsohn, their prospects just got a little bit brighter. Let's go ahead and see why it is he says that their prospects just got brighter. Well, he says, we found out last Friday that Eon Productions' No Time to Die has passed governmental censorship regulations and would indeed get a theatrical release in China. Okay, great. So one of the reasons why it looks a little bit more hopeful for this movie is because they got through the censors of Communist China. So Communist China said, hey, everything's great. You can release your movie here. It's fantastic. No problems at all. That's not worrying or concerning at all. Not to mention the fact that they basically get crumbs from the Chinese box office because the vast majority of the money that any studio makes in that country goes to the communist government. But, you know, I digress, I guess. But even then, it mentions films like Skyfall, making $65 million, which when you compare it to the $1.1 billion that Skyfall ended up making worldwide, really isn't all that much. And when you talk about actual net gain, net profit, it's even less. So one kind of asks the question of, how is this a brighter prospect? I guess you could say, well, not every Western film is getting released in China these days, Odin, so this is a great thing. This is terrific news. Again, we're dealing with commies here, and you barely get a piece of the pie, and then when you look at those numbers, there's so many other films that have made much more than that in China. Again, it's a little bit kind of a, I don't know. I guess you could argue that it's a little bit misleading to say that at the very least. And then goes on to say, it's still the second biggest, not a Marvel DC Fast Saga Hollywood flick since late summer 2018 behind Godzilla vs. Kong, which made $188 million. Still, the Chinese box office accounted for just 14.5% of the $695 million, 20% of the $583 million, and 23% of the $793 million, respectively. They are talking about the Mission Impossible films making over $100 million in those countries. And it's funny how he just kind of glosses over Godzilla vs. Kong, because it is interesting and important to point out that many people looked at that film as being a huge financial success. But when you remind yourselves that about a third or so of the entire box office for that one movie came from China, you realize, oh, yeah, they only get 25% of that. Oh, the movie cost a lot. Okay, maybe they didn't make as much as we once thought. So you kind of have to take that in stride just a little bit. He goes on to say, while China is not a kingmaker of the 007 series, like it arguably is for the Fast Saga, it certainly is an encouraging sign. Equally encouraging, if not more so, is the strong domestic performance of Shang-Chi in The Legend of the Ten Rings. The MCU movie has earned $150 million in 12 days, following a $94 million Labor Day weekend launch and $34 million second weekend gross. Ah, yes. Let us bring up Shang-Chi in The Legend of the Ten Rings, or the legend of of racial pandering. Yes, let's bring that up, because I'm sure that is going to automatically guarantee that No Time to Die is going to be successful or as successful as this movie. Sure. Good luck with that. He goes on to say, while China could have played more of a role, like an Ant-Man and the Wasp with $125 million, than Spider-Man, $199 million in China, it's still playing about as well as expected in North America. So here's the other issue coming out, is that this movie is getting a delayed release. So it's getting released in a couple of weeks internationally, and then it is going to have a slow rollout until it finally gets released after much delay. And something tells me that though this film might have a COVID impressive domestic opening weekend compared to others, I don't think it's going to be enough to get to the point of it making $625 million that it needs to at least make in order to break even. As I said, the number's probably a lot higher. We're looking probably somewhere between $600 to $800 million needed for the film just to break even before it starts making any actual net gains or net profits. He goes on to say, Universal is distributing the film overseas, presumably in hopes of being the global distributor for 007, depending on how MGM's sale to Amazon works out, but MGM is still on the hook for the domestic. That's partially why the film has been delayed as long as possible, since a fully recovered Chinese market way back in August 2020 wasn't going to help the studio, mostly concerned with domestic box office. Yes, and again, another reason why is because they don't get a whole lot from that Chinese marketplace. And to try and say that Shang-Chi is the proof in the pudding, as it were, that the box office in the domestic market is back really is, again, a little bit of a misleading statement, because when you actually dive into why that film has been as successful as it is, you start to realize, wait a minute, when we compare this to other Marvel films, other films to come out this year, it's not nearly as impressive as far as worldwide total gross is concerned, and again, makes you start to ask questions about whether that really means that this film has a bright future ahead. But anyway, I saw this headline. I just had to talk about it because no one is talking about the massive amount of money that this film has cost. And the fact that its release in China especially is one of the reasons why he thinks that prospects have gotten brighter when it has to make so much back worldwide just to break even. And then adding on top of that, that somehow Shang-Chi's success is going to equate to No Time to Die success while ignoring so many other factors that are going on. Again, it's kind of amazing what Scotty Boy is able to do with this. But what are your thoughts? Do you think Scotty Boy's right that the prospects for this box office are high? I mean, again, I think it'll probably perform better than the typical film that's come out this year, but that's kind of par for the course at this point, because we've not really had a lot of major releases to come out this year. There's been so many delays to this film, and guess what? There are still a lot of hardcore James Bond fans, but if anything that we've heard about the behind the scenes is true about the direction that this franchise seems to be going, you might have a huge second week drop off from bad word of mouth saying, yeah, this isn't James Bond anymore, or hey, this is pushing in a direction that we don't like. Again, could happen. We'll have to wait and see, of course, to see the actual numbers, to actually break those down and to make some official projections, though this one's going to be a little bit harder to track, since this, just like what we see with Dune, is going to be harder to track as well because of this delayed release in certain marketplaces early. So we'll get a good indication of how well it's being received in those countries. It's kind of drop off at seeing in those countries, but really they're relying, as they even mentioned in this article, that the domestic box office is going to be the make or break for this movie. Very similar to what we saw with Shang-Chi as well, because even though it did just enough internationally, it was the domestic number that really put it over the edge to be able to, and at least in my projections, get to the realm of being able to break even. However, this film, even if it does well, even if it does Shang-Chi levels, again, Shang-Chi is only expected to make enough for that film to be able to break even and make a little bit of profit. If this film does similar numbers to Shang-Chi, domestically or internationally, it's going to spell big trouble. Talking about $200 million plus potential loss for this movie, which really wouldn't be surprising. And at this point, based on what I'm hearing about what is going on behind the scenes, wouldn't really upset me all that much. But let me know your thoughts about this in the comment section below. Like this video, smash that like button, light up that fire button if you're watching on Odyssey. Again, you're all amazing and beautiful people. I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day. And as always, God bless. And now for a huge shout out to all of my September Locals Patreon and Subscribe Star members. First with my Locals members, Cats App, D Sharp, It's a Modern Major General Story, Laura Bifford de Hobbit, and Robert Barnes. I want to give a shout out to, especially to Laura, who is now a double supporter on Locals and on Patreon, so thank you for that. And to all of my Locals members. A shout out also to my Patreon members, Andrew Hoyle, animation commentator Brandon, Brian P., Christopher Bowman, Don Bruno de la Mancha, Father Christopher Miller, hail to you, Father, Father Damian Cook, Garrett Searles, Hannibal Grimm, Harold Francis, Inflamed Wood, Jacob Juice, Jeffrey Toon, Joe Horn, Jonathan Carney, Gomer Kyle 79, Laura the Modern Major General Story once again, Mike Jackson, Mad Mitch Dunaway, Mondo Spieler, Mr. Peabody, On to June, Orange Hat Reviews, Out of Step with Reality, Priscilla Hall, Rosetta Ullen, Teresa Martin, Theodore Bendon, Tina Bojan, and Tina B., the Empress of the Universe. And a shout out also to my Subscribe Star members, The R, Fast Reaction, Nosferatu Gatsu, John B., Perpetual Punster, Mr. Roy, Glinzer, J. Alex McCarthy Jr., Dean Heiss / the new number 2, J-Rod the Beer Guru, and ZK Man. Thank you all very much for supporting the channel. And I want to give a huge shout out to new members, one-time supporters over on Locals, Kara Tharp, K Tharp 56, and Brett D 90. Thank you again for being a one-time supporter over on Locals, and also to my newest Patreon member, Stan Gunovic. And hopefully I pronounced that correctly, but thank you for being my newest members. It really does mean a lot. And if you want to have your name shouted out at the end of every single video or live stream on the main channel, please check out the links in the description below, specifically that top link, which will bring you to all of the links to my various social media pages and also places of support as well. And remember that if you join at the Army of Asgard level, you also get access to giveaways of 4K titles. Right now, I have a live giveaway of Snatch on 4K Steelbook. I've also got ones for Dread, Wrath of Man Blu-ray. I've also got A Quiet Place Part 2 on 4K. I've got Top Gun on 4K, Sicario on 4K, tons of films and more to come, especially as more films are getting released for those giveaways. At the Keeper of the Bifrost level, you get all of that, plus you get access to an exclusive podcast that I do with John the Flick Pick Flickinger. Not only do you get to listen to the podcast, you also get to ask questions that we answer as much as we can and as fully as we can in a much more, I guess you could say, uncensored way, but again, a much more free-flowing way for our members over there at the Keeper of the Bifrost level and above. And if you join the Chosen of Valhalla level, you get access to all of those things, plus in your first month, you get a free t-shirt, your choice, and I send it to you no matter where you are in the world. And also, you get to once a month be featured on the channel in the Chosen of Valhalla live stream, where we talk about movie, news, and pretty much anything that you want to talk about. So if that all sounds like fun to you, check out those links below. You're all amazing and beautiful people. Hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day. And as always, God bless.